Hey guys, today we're doing something extra special. I've put together 25 of my best Halloween DIYs into one mega video. From Pottery Barn and Anthropologie dupes to quick Dollar Tree hacks. I'll show you how to decorate your home for spooky season without breaking the bank. So grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into all these high-end Halloween looks on a Dollar Tree budget. So my inspiration for this DIY comes from Pottery Barn's faux black tree. Their version is over $100 and is 21 inches tall. So when I saw these picks for $1.50 each from the Dollar Tree, I knew I could turn them into something pretty close with just 2 of them. All I had to do was cut off the candy corn and these little balls and spray paint it black. And don't worry if you can't find these exact pics. They actually have something similar on Amazon that you could use, and I'll link it below in the description box. So once it was painted, I cut off 2 of the smaller branches on one of the stems so I could put the 2 pieces together easier with floral tape. I used a brown tape, but it doesn't matter the color because we'll touch everything up with some black paint when we're all done. The 2 smaller branches I leave until the end to fill in where we need it. So now it's time to paint the pot, and I actually had the exact same size terracotta pot in my gardening stash. It's a 5x4, which is a pretty common size, and your pot doesn't have to be terracotta. It could be plastic or ceramic, but if it's plastic, you'll want to weight it down with some rocks or rice. And to keep with the inspiration, Pottery Barn's pot looks like concrete. So just taking gray chalk paint by Folk Art in the color Maui Sands with some baking soda to give the pot some texture, I gave it one good coat. I thought it was going to have to add more color, but once everything dried, I was happy with the color and the texture. So now for the fun part of seeing it all come together. I cut up some of the blackish pool noodle, also from the Dollar Tree. I add it to my pot, and then I decide where I'm going to place the little tree. I also made sure to add lots of hot glue. Once I'm happy with everything, I add back the branches, the 2 leftover branches that I took away, and then the Spanish moss to finish it off. And then it was time for the lights. Now Dollar Tree sells the battery-operated fairy lights, but I got these from Amazon. They were only $5 for a 6-pack, and they already come with batteries. I like them better because the battery pack is smaller, but you can use the Dollar Tree ones. It's really about preference. I ended up using 2 packs. I just kept winding the lights around the branches until I liked how it looked. Also with these fairy lights, the wire is very easy to mold and bend. And for only $6, I now have a beautiful tree that gives me the haunted vibe like the Pottery Barn version. And it was super easy to make. For the next DIY, I don't have an inspiration. I just fell in love with these shelf sitters from the Dollar Tree. They have a vintage look to me, and the back side is a chalkboard. The pumpkin one is my favorite, and I knew we could elevate it a little and make it not look like a Dollar Tree sign. To start, I wanted to try a trick I saw online. You just take some Mod Podge and use small crosshatch strokes over an image. By adding a few coats and letting each one dry in between, it gives the picture more dimension and makes it almost look like a painting. Next, I'm going to add these little sticker dots. I don't actually know what to call them, but I'm going to put them all around the border, front and back. I had these dots in my stash, and if you didn't know, they're available in the Crafter Square, of course, at the Dollar Tree. And don't worry about the color, it's going to get painted. And with my chalk paint, I covered both sides and the base in one even coat, but being careful not to get any on the image. And now the fun part, the finishing touches to make the piece pop. To do that, I'll take some gold Rub and Buff and rub it around the edges and over the dots to make them stand out. And then a little spider glued to the spider web in the corner in the picture, and a black rose I had in my stash completes the look. And here it is styled with our spooky tree. This one just cost $1.50 because I had everything else on hand. The idea for this DIY came from a skeleton candle holder I saw at Pottery Barn and is $39 for just one. And my version is just inspired by this one. All I used were the Dollar Tree tapered candle holders, a pair of skeleton tongs, and some hot glue. You could use a permanent glue, but I don't want a permanent hold in case I decide to repurpose the tongs or candle holders later. Since I'm gluing metal and plastic, the hot glue holds them together really well, but it also comes apart easily if you ever want it to. I also wanted to mention that you could use any tall tapered candle holder. It doesn't have to be from Dollar Tree. I see similar ones at the thrift store all the time. And to be safe, I use LED tapered candles that I got off of Amazon. I'll have a link for them in the description box. You get 6 for $8. I'm not a fan of the Dollar Tree ones. They look a little fake to me. The Amazon candles work out to be about $1.40 each, and they come with a remote control. I also think this candle holder would look great with the black tongs like the inspiration, but I couldn't get white out of my head for bones. But after I saw it, I was rethinking my choice. You could even spray them silver and make them look like metal. That would look beautiful too. And here they are, all finished. Super fast and easy DIY. I think these would look amazing on a buffet or a bunch on a dining room table. And for $2 each, you can't go wrong. And I think I will be spraying mine silver. When I spotted these little lanterns by Birch and Vine, I knew exactly what I was going to do with them. A no DIY DIY. All you need to do is pair them with a Dollar Tree pillar candle holder and voila, a perfect pairing to any tablescape or vignette for Halloween or even Christmas. For our next DIY, I wanted to try and recreate the spooky books I've been seeing online for years now. And of course, Dollar Tree has us covered for books, but you could use what you have or get them from a thrift store. You just don't want to use anything that you might want to read. The first thing we'll do is take off the jackets, and then with some watered down paint or brown wax, we're going to paint the pages. It's a little messy, so make sure your work surface is protected. And by making the paint watery, it's going to do two things. One, it'll make the pages look old, and two, it'll warp your book a little. So don't be alarmed when that happens. It actually makes them look more authentic. Now we need to make them look more textured, and there are two ways to do this. And since it's my first time, I wanted to try both methods. The first method is using a single ply paper towels with Mod Podge. I make my own Mod Podge with glue and water. Start by applying Mod Podge to the book and then add the paper towel, and keep doing that until you have the entire book covered, making sure to add enough Mod Podge to the top and gluing everything down properly, including the edges. The second method is to use tissue paper and do the same Mod Podge technique. I also realized midway through that this got messy pretty quickly, but just by putting down some wax paper, it helped stop anything from sticking to other surfaces. So I highly recommend to lay some wax paper down before you start. Once the books are all covered in paper towel and tissue, leave them to dry overnight. And look at the texture on these books. I think I'm going to have to use this technique on other things. I just love how they came out. The next step is to figure out what you want to name your books. Then start drawing it out on the spine. I use a black marker, but a pencil will work too. Now before you start the next step, make sure you have plenty of hot glue. And once your glue gun is ready to start, go over the words you wrote on your spine. You can also add other symbols, numbers, stars, or whatever you want to make your books your own. Just have fun with it. And after I added the hot glue, I painted the books a coat of lightly watered down black paint, but somehow I don't have footage of that. Now the magic of Rub and Buff. This is where you're going to start to see everything just pop. The texture on the books, and of course all the hot glue words or characters, and you can use any color Rub and Buff. I went with the golds because that's what I had on hand. I then decided to add a couple of the puffy stickers from my stash to the spells book. And actually, you could embellish these books with so many things. I also had keys from an old craft, and I thought it might look cute and finish it off nicely. And here they are, styled a couple different ways. Will you be trying this DIY? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. First up is the viral ghost painting I've been seeing all over TikTok, and I wanted to give it a try. If you haven't seen it, people are thrifting old pictures and paintings and adding ghosts to them. I just love how it looks, and I pick up Dollar Tree canvases when I see ones I like. So instead of thrifting mine, I went to my stash and found this one. I also had a Dollar Tree frame. For me, this project didn't cost anything, but really, if you go to Dollar Tree and have to grab these two items, it'll only cost you $2.50 because both the canvas and the frames are still $1.25. Now, the one thing I like to do when I'm using a larger frame and a canvas is to take it apart from the staples. I just use a flathead screwdriver. The reason I do this is to get every inch of the canvas. It's also super easy to do. I save the wooden frame and the sawtooth hanger for future projects and keep it in my stash. If you're using a smaller frame, you could just cut the canvas. Then I take my frame and the canvas and figure out which way I want the canvas to go before penciling in the ghosts. I then just decide where I want to put the ghosts. The smaller ones I put towards the back to make them look further away, and the larger ones to the front. This way it gives the picture some depth. And just so you know, I'm no artist, so if I can do this, anyone can. Don't be intimidated by this project. It's very easy to create a ghost. Once the ghosts are penciled in, I start painting them with white acrylic paint. I first start with a wider brush, but then quickly realize I needed a thinner one. I like how translucent they're looking, but needed a few coats and letting them dry between coats. I decided to leave them a little ethereal looking, but you can make them more opaque if you want. Once everything was dry, it was time to go in and paint the eyes. And a little trick to get the perfect round eyes is to dip the opposite end of your paintbrush into the paint and then gently touch the canvas and adding paint as you need it. I also decided to just paint eyes on my ghosts, but you could do mouths if you want. After giving that an hour or so to dry, I then place the glass over the canvas to position it where I want it, and then trace around the glass with a pencil, and then with some scissors, I trim the canvas to fit the frame. And here's the final project. Honestly, it looks cute here, but in person, it looks amazing. I'm obsessed with how this turned out, and you can embellish the frame further, but I decided to keep it the way it is. And with those little copper baby shoes I thrifted, I think it makes it look even spookier. This next DIY is so easy and quick. All you need is one of the small cloches from the Dollar Tree, a package of skulls that they have in stores now, and you can even use the eyeballs if you can't find the skulls, and some string lights. My fairy lights are from Amazon. I like them better because they come with batteries, and the battery pack is very small. Plus, you get a pack of 6 for $5. But you could use the Dollar Tree string lights if that's what you have. Both will work. And if you're interested in the ones from Amazon, I'll leave a link in the description box. So I just started by adding 1/3 to 1/2 of the lights to the cloche, and then I start placing the skulls one by one, making sure they're facing the right way. So when you flip it over, they aren't upside down. And once you get them the way you like them, it takes some finagling. You are actually ready to add the bottom. And there you have it, a spooky addition to any tablescape or display. I just love how this turned out for very little effort and just about $4. The next DIY was inspired by these Anthropologie spider candle pins that will cost $26 for just 4 pins. So we're going to take 3 candle holders, some taper candles, and spider rings, all from the Dollar Tree. And then you'll just need a pair of scissors and hot glue. And while your glue gun is getting hot, you'll snip off the ring part of the spider ring so you can glue it onto the candles. You could also use thumbtacks to make it more like the inspiration, but I'm just going to display the candles so it's not necessary. And once you're ready to start gluing, you'll want to play around with the spiders a little just to figure out where you want to place them. And just like that, you have some cute Anthropologie-inspired spider candles. And the best part is that each one will cost you less than $2. This DIY inspiration comes from the Pottery Barn Lighted Skull Cloche. And I knew with this large Dollar Tree cloche and skull head with the raven for $1.50, we could make a much more substantial piece. And with these willows sprayed black, that they would work. I also picked up the black roses and already had this tray in my stash, but if you don't have a tray like this, you can use a pizza pan from the Dollar Tree. So once I sprayed the tray, and the willows black, I was ready to assemble. Now I laid out all the extra Halloween supplies that I had on hand so I could play around with what would look good. And I don't use everything, so just use what you have. And once I decided where I wanted the skull to go, I dry fit the cloche so I know where the edges are. I then mark it so I can stay within the parameters of the cloche. Then I'm able to start gluing down some Spanish moss. I'm not going to glue down the head because I just want it to be easier to store, and if I can take it apart a little, it will be. So I just start playing with what I have to see what I like and what fits, cutting stems, flowers, and the spiders as needed, just gluing and adding. It's a fun project to see come together, and if you can find the willows, don't worry, Amazon has some stems that would work great, and I'll leave a link in the description box. And once I'm happy with the way it looks, I start adding the fairy lights. Again, I don't glue them down so I can use them in another project after Halloween, and it's also easier to store. And now for the top of the cloche. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to use, and I just played around with what I had. And at the end, I really liked the skeleton hand from a wreath holder, and it was super easy to snip off with my tin snips. I just bend the hand and fingers to fit over the cloche. Because the cloche has holes at the top, I didn't need to glue it on. And here it is, all styled. I just love how it came out. What do you think? Are you going to try this project? Now for the no DIY. That means no hot glue or paint required, and I like to give you at least one per video. For this one, I couldn't help but to fall in love with this candy dish from the Dollar Tree. It's only $3 and pretty substantial for the price. But I didn't see candy in it. I saw a plant, a real one or an artificial one. And I had this artificial rosemary in my kitchen, so why not give the skull a spiky hairdo? I just love it, and I think it's the perfect little Halloween touch for my kitchen. You could also use a plant with hanging branches. It's just the perfect no DIY. For the next DIY, the inspiration comes from the Pottery Barn skeleton tapered candle holders. And I did these in my other Halloween video, and I'll link that in the description box if you missed it. But I used the white skeleton tongs, and when I saw the black ones, I knew I had to use them too. So real quick, if you missed the last video, you were just going to take the tongs and position them onto the Dollar Tree candle holder and add a dab of hot glue. I don't add a lot, so I can take them apart when Halloween is over and use the candle holders for other projects. I also pair them with the tapered LED flameless candles for safety. I get mine from Amazon because I don't care for the Dollar Tree ones. They look fake to me. I also like the Amazon ones because they come with a remote and you get 6 candles and 2 remotes for $9. I'll leave that link in the description box if you're interested. And here they are styled. I think this version came out a lot closer to the inspiration, and these would look great on a dining room tablescape or a Halloween display, and it's very budget friendly. The next DIY comes from all the black pumpkins that I'm seeing everywhere, and I like how Pottery Barns looks like terracotta. So I thought I'd give my lighted stacked pumpkins that I've had as a part of my Halloween decor for years an update, and it's super easy to do. I could have sprayed painted them, but I wanted the orange to remain inside. So I took some black paint and baking soda to give it some grit and make it look like Pottery Barn's terracotta ones. It took a couple of coats, and you need to let them dry well between coats. Now you could leave it like this, but I wanted to give it a little more aged look. So on the last coat of paint before it dries completely, I started applying flour using a tea strainer and sort of sifting it all over. And if you have a sifter, that would work great. Oh, and lay down some wax paper before starting the flour. It's pretty messy. Once everything is dry, you'll take either a soft paintbrush or a makeup brush and brush away the loose flour. And here it is, all lit up. I think it really updated my stacked pumpkins and gives them a more high-end look. And in this styling picture, they look a little bit whiter than they really are, and I just love how they turned out. Now these ghost candles I'm going to make come from a TikTok I saw and wanted to try. So what you do is you take some tapered candles and put them in a container and add some very warm water but not boiling. You soak your candles for about 10 minutes. And when they're soft enough, when you can start to mold them, you curve them into shapes. You want to vary the shapes and make each one look a little different. Now, when I started to mold mine, the first one broke, and the other two cracked a little, but I kept them in the video because they did turn out cute. I just won't be burning them because it will be dangerous. And if you know of any way to do this without cracking them, please let me know in the comments. I also used a Sharpie for the eyes, but you could use paint as well. And here's the final look. I think they are adorable and would look great in a big group or in a candelabra. What do you think? Are you going to give this one a try? So this DIY comes from all the leftover pieces I had from all the projects. And I decided that I would take an old pot I had that I was already white and turn it into a ghost. If you don't have a white pot, you can always paint what you already have. So I took a Dollar Tree black vinyl and cut out eyes and a mouth and added them to the planter. And then with the leftover pool noodles from the lighted tree DIY in the other Halloween video, I created a base to use for the leftover willows and black flowers, and adding the leftover ornaments I had from another project and putting them on bamboo skewers. And instead of spending time painting the skewers, I just colored them with a Sharpie. Then I added some of the leftover spider rings and kept going until I was happy with the outcome. I literally had no money in this since it was all leftover supplies. I think it's a great way to use up some of the supplies I had on hand, and you could do the same. And here's the result. I think it would make a great hostess gift, or keep it for yourself. For the first DIY, my inspo were these skull candle holders I've been seeing online. In fact, Dollar Tree has a version of it also, but it's in the plus section for $7. And I knew we could create something that looks even better for less. And it only took one of these plastic skull bottles and an LED dripping votive candle. But if you can't find the dripping ones, don't worry, we're going to make our own drips, so any votive candle that will fit in the opening will work. With hot glue, you'll start adding the votive, making drip marks from the top down the forehead of the skull. I do the drips from the top of the candle to kind of match up with the drips I'm making on the skull. But also occasionally removing the votive because we don't want to glue the votive to the top, because that's how we're going to turn the votive off and on. I'm just trying to make the drips look like they are cohesive. It doesn't have to be perfect, and towards the end I create hot glue drips separately on both pieces, just making sure not to cover the bottom of the votive so that it will still fit in the top of the skull. Then I take it outside and give it a good coat of flat linen spray paint by Behr. All of the extra supplies for this video I will try and link in the description box if I can find them. Now to make the skull come to life, I mix a little Waverly Brown wax with some water, and I have some wax not diluted so I can go into the crevices and make them stand out. I also have a spray bottle with water ready to go just in case I overdo an area. I can wet it down and wipe it off. At first I was wiping off too much, so I decided to go in and paint the areas I wanted darker and leave it to sit for a minute or so while I worked on another area by giving it a chance to dry. Just painting and wiping and going over the areas I wanted darker. I went over those areas a couple of times until it was the way I wanted. It didn't take long and I really enjoyed the process. And here it is, all finished and styled. I'm obsessed with how spooky this one came out. And you'd never guess it started with a plastic Dollar Tree bottle. Can you imagine several of these spread out on a buffet, all lit up and flickering? You could even place some on risers for different levels and extra drama. And the best part, the total cost was only $2.12. DIY inspiration comes from McGee Co's Arachne candle holders. I just think they are so unique, but for $48 and $68, that's a little out of my budget. I knew we could do this with the Dollar Tree spiders they get in every year. So a couple of them and their emergency candles we are ready to craft. You could use any battery operated candles. I just like that these had a lower profile. So the first thing I did was create a pilot hole with my drill in the middle of the back of the spider. The plastic is pretty hard and a utility knife isn't enough to get it started. But once the hole is drilled, it's easy to start cutting away at the plastic with the utility knife and making sure the candle fits as you go so you don't accidentally cut away too much. Just be super careful and go slow. And don't worry about any tears, scratches, or discolorations. It's easily touched up with a little paint or even a Sharpie. And here's how they turned out. I think they are a great alternative to McGee Co's version, a fun, creepy touch to any Halloween decor. You can add them to a windowsill, a bathroom, or anywhere you want to bring in the Halloween spirit. And can you believe it? For only $4.25, we were able to make 2. Now, my inspiration for this next DIY is sort of from the McGee Co skull planner, but it didn't start out that way. If you watched my last video, you'd know that this was a no DIY, but I really like the McGee Co one better because of the neutral color, and since I already had the candy dish from the Dollar Tree, it was a simple transformation. To start, I took it outside for a quick spray paint with an off-white gloss by Rust-Oleum, and now for the fun part, getting to play with the paint. So I put an off-white, white, and brown to my makeshift palette, and with a wet paper towel, I put it into the paint, mixing to create a muted tone. Then just dabbing a wet paper towel on the candy dish and wiping. When it came to the hands where I couldn't reach, I used a paintbrush and just wiped any drips. I just keep going, lightening or darkening places as needed. I find this technique very therapeutic, and the best part, you can't make a mistake. So when I felt it was done, it was time to add the florals. I picked up these at Dollar Tree. I'm not loving the price these days for the florals and usually skip them, but I thought this bunch was pretty good. Plus it's versatile because I'll be able to use it for a Thanksgiving display, which is why I bent the stems and didn't affix them permanently to the candy dish turned vase. And here's how she turned out. I think it's a great pop of color for my kitchen, and I love the soft tones of the skull now. What do you think? Do you prefer this version or the silver one? For this no DIY, which means no hot glue or paint required, I thought we could easily mimic the McGee Co's bag of resin bones. They're cute, but not for $38. And this is super simple to create with a few supplies I had on hand. All I had to do was pick up a Dollar Tree long jointed skeleton for $1.50. And I had on hand this dough bowl I thrifted, but you could also use one of the Dollar Tree trays. Even a pie plate would work. And some moss, and we're ready to go. Now, disjoining the skeleton was pretty easy, and I found it snapped off better when I used my scissors and kind of twisted it. And once all the bones were apart, it was time to get them in the bowl. And of course, I will use the skull and the torso for another project. And as you can see, it's super easy just to add the moss and arrange the bones, which now doesn't even look like cheap plastic. They actually have a speckled kind of mottled look to them. And here they are, all styled and ready for Halloween. I think it's an easy, no DIY and perfect addition to my small coffee table in the living room. This next DIY was inspired by these gorgeous napkins. I just love the artwork, and when I saw them, I knew I needed to do something with them. And I just realized this too is a no DIY. Super simple. All I did was take a 4x6 frame I had in my stash and cut the part of the napkin image that I wanted. You could do a larger frame and include more of the napkin, but this is what I had, so I went with it. You get 24 napkins in this pack, so there are plenty left over for any holiday get-togethers or more crafting. And just like that, you have a cute piece of art worthy of any Halloween apothecary or display. Next up is the skull from McGee Co. that I just thought was so fun and creepy under a cloche. And with all the different skulls available at Dollar Tree, it was a no-brainer to try this one. And if you don't have a cloche, you can use a cake stand cover or even a glass bowl or a big jar. Putting a skull under glass is just an easy way to elevate any Halloween table or display and add some spookiness. And I decided on this skull, and he looks creepy just like he is, especially under the cloche. But as a crafter, you know I had to see if I could make him look better. And of course, I gave it a coat of spray paint, the same bare one that I used for the skull candle. But this time, I just dusted it. I liked the color variations. I also thought about cutting off the bottom of his jaw like the inspiration, but because this piece is plastic, I was worried it wouldn't sit right, so I just left it alone. Now, because the paint is chalk paint and it's very porous, I started out spraying the piece with some water to be safe. I didn't want to go straight in with the wax in case it absorbed too quickly. I also had some watered down brown wax and some non-watered down wax and just painted, wiped, and dabbed until I liked how it looked. paying close attention to the crevices, especially the eyes, nose, and teeth. When I was almost done, I would wait a minute or two before wiping to let the darkened areas dry a little. And if you're still hanging out with me, then I know you must love Halloween and DIYs as much as I do. So I thought it would be fun to give away a few of my projects, including some from my last 2 Halloween videos. Just make sure you're subscribed and let me know in the comments which one you'd want. If it's available, it might just end up on your doorstep. And here it is, all finished under glass. I love how creepy this one turned out. Putting a skull under a cloche just instantly makes it feel high-end and dramatic. You could do a single one as a centerpiece or group a few together at varying heights for a really striking Halloween display. And this might sound weird, but he kind of resembles one of my ex-boyfriends. Next DIY came from me playing around with some images in Canva. I created from one ghost image a family portrait, so I thought, why not try and paint one? Keep in mind, I'm no artist, but I like the idea. And being a crafter, I feel like there's a no fear zone where you can always turn it into something else if it doesn't work out. Plus, I had this frame from Dollar Tree in my stash, and it has the haunted house vibes. So I began to pencil on 3 ghost shapes. And with some white paint, I just made sure to keep each ghost their own entity, with them being together. So separate but together, which should make sense with the visual. And I'm sorry about the camera angle. I must have bumped it, but I wanted to keep the footage in here so you could see what I was doing. And I ended up doing about 3 coats of paint, letting each one dry in between. And I think you can see here how the ghosts are together but separate. And now that everything was dry, it was time to add the eyes. And with the top of my paintbrush, I dip it into the black paint, and then gently touching the image, it creates the perfect round shape for the eye. And I keep doing this process until the entire family has eyes. And here it is. While it's no Van Gogh, I think it's a whimsical craft perfect for the mantle where a family portrait should go. What do you think? And this next no DIY fits right into the fun, whimsical Halloween vibe. I decided to take this window cling that Dollar Tree has out right now and add it to the glass frame I had in my stash. You could take out the clips that hold the glass in place and glue the glass, but they didn't bother me, so I left it. And this way I can use the frame for another project. And with a Dollar Tree easel, this friendly skeleton has his place. I think this would be great in a kid's room or a bathroom. It's just an easy, no DIY. For this DIY, I wanted to use more of those gorgeous Halloween napkins I showed you earlier. This one is super easy, but it turns out so good. I actually saw the idea on Crafts by Caitlin last year. Her channel will be linked below if you want to check it out. So I started cutting out the part of the napkin that I wanted to apply to the candle. And you can do this with a real candle or one of the waxy LED candles like I'm using here. It has to have wax so that it can melt the image to the candle. I then peel the second ply away from the candle. With my Cricut iron, I iron the napkin on. You could use a craft iron or a regular iron, and I'll have some options linked below. You can also do the entire napkin, but I wanted this one to just have this specific design. From the bottom and top, I try to cut it as close as possible, and then I iron the edges to give it a finished look. Oh, and I think Caitlin used wax paper to wrap around the candle and napkin. Not sure if it helps protect your iron, but I just wiped mine off on the drop cloth while it was still hot and it was fine. And here it is, styled on a pillar candle holder. I love these because they're so versatile. You can customize them for parties, weddings, showers, holidays, or even just to match your everyday decor. They work in any room and they make a nice gift. And if you like these DIYs, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.